Production incentives. So what are they? It's like free money. You know, if you go somewhere and you spend the money, you're dumping money into the local economy, you're creating jobs, you're training people. It's a brilliant, brilliant idea. At the end of the day, some of these projects won't get made, period, unless they can achieve a certain budget level, right? And one of the ways you do that is by using production incentives. Production incentives is like the easiest exercise you can do to try to mitigate the risk of spending too much on a production or mitigating the cost of a production. So very early on in productions, we're actually able to give people an estimate not only of what the incentive is that they're going to earn, but we can also lend them money against it, right? And if you are successful in raising all of your other budget, you can always come back to us and I can provide that last 15, 20, 25%, right? So from a fundraising perspective, it's a really handy tool. So generally speaking, there are 4 types. There are refundable tax credits and transferable tax credits. Refundable tax credits are like what they have in New York, which means when the production is all done, they've spent all their money, there's an audit of the expenses. When the government authority, when the state authority verifies that your numbers are correct, they issue you a certificate that says you've earned a tax credit of X number of dollars. So in a refundable tax credit state, you have to file a tax return and attach that piece of paper to the tax return. When the state looks at and examines your tax liability, just like they do for individuals, if they see you owe no tax, they send you a refund check. And that check can be used to reduce the overall cost of your project. With a transferable tax credit, it works just like refundable tax credits, except the state says, you're not going to get a check. In cases where they don't write you a check, like Georgia, like Illinois, like Massachusetts, you sell it. You sell it to somebody that can use it. And no company that buys a tax credit is going to pay 100 cents on the dollar. So for budgeting purposes, if you're a line producer or even a creative producer, right, and you're trying to be the CEO of this enterprise, and you're trying to calculate, okay, at the end of the day, what's my net cost of this film? You take into account the value of the tax credit. That's going to be one of the things that you worry about when you're working in the tax incentive space. What's the real number? What's the number I should be working with when I'm doing my budget analysis? There are rebates and grants. Rebates I find to be the easiest. You prove to them that you spent the money and you get a rebate. The idea is come here, spend the money, hire the people, dump money into our local economy, and I'll give you 30 cents back on the dollar or 25 cents back on the dollar, right? You have to understand the law. You have to read the law. Do we want productions to hire locally? Or can they bring in people from out of town? Let's say you're shooting in Georgia, and Georgia is like bursting at the seams with production. What if you can't find the grip that you need, right? What if you have to bring the grip in from Tennessee? Is that person going to count or not? You need to understand, is this for residents or residents and non-residents? Is it accommodating to above the line as well as below the line? Is it accommodating to in front of the camera or behind the camera? They're all different, right? All these states are different. It's like so hard to navigate. There are all these things you have to be an expert at. Well, you do have to be an expert at it. When you're reading the law and you're trying to interpret the law, you first want to read, well, how did the state authority that's actually managing this incentive, what was their interpretation of the law? Because sometimes you can work within their interpretation. There have been times, though, when I've disagreed. And I've said, that's really not what the law says. And in fact, it's pretty open. And that's your interpretation. This is my interpretation. So let's get an opinion from somebody. Let's get a tax opinion or a legal opinion. Sometimes I've won and sometimes I've lost. But there's nothing wrong with raising the question. And that's why, you look for people like us, right, to have that conversation with the state authority, because it's not the first time we've done it, right? We've done it 100 times, and we kind of know how to frame the debate.